Yo, how are we, GameLeapers? Coach Cheese is back at it with another daily upload, and in this video I'm going to reveal the biggest mistake made at each rank so that you can go and fix that mistake right away in your games and get climbing. Now the thing is, guys, everyone commits these mistakes. They just happen to be more commonplace at certain levels of play, whether it's prioritizing the wrong resource or playing more champions than we have pro guides ads on our videos. These are cardinal sins all of us make, so if you stick around for the next 10 minutes or so, you are guaranteed to take something away. Now something else you are guaranteed to take something away from is the GameLeap website. We have hundreds of challenger courses, guides, videos, and these aren't just recycled from our YouTube like most sites. They are fresh, they are red hot, and they will help you out a ton this season. So sign up, links as always in the description and comment section. Alright, let's get into it, guys, and we're going to start off with iron, and remember, bronze, silver, gold, Korean challenger, well, maybe not that one, but all of us mere mortals can take something away from all of these tips, especially this one. So if you are stuck in iron, the cheese is here to help, and one thing you guys have to stop doing is normal casting your spells. So you know when you press Q, W, E, or R and the range indicator appears and you have to left click again to fire that spell? God, what an effort. Well, guess what this wastes? It wastes time, right? So when you're fighting someone and it's intense, your palms are sweaty, your knees are weak, and your arms are heavy, well, the last thing you want is to take more time than you have to line up a spell, because you don't have that time. The only two spells in the game you really need normal cast for are Victor's Death Ray and Rumble's Ultimate. So if you play these two champions, you're excused. Otherwise, you should be playing with everything on quick cast. And I remember when I started playing way back in Season 2 and did this, and I was like, WTF, this actually makes a huge difference. It just speeds up everything and makes your combos feel way cleaner. Think about this season as well, guys. You've got damage flying at you from all over the place, champions dashing and blinking everywhere. You need to be quick with your spells. So putting your abilities on quick cast will for sure help you out a ton and make you a better player. Now ahead of iron, guys, we of course have bronze, and if you placed in B1 after your placements or you have been there longer than Kadeem, the cheese is here for you, so listen up. Now your movement on the rift, guys, is so important, and being able to click around your screen and the map with precision is a must if you want to make it to the big time. This is why Faker dodges every skill shot, unless he's against Ming Zhao, and this is why most of us get hit by most of them. So one tip which will help everyone out in this department, stop botting it. So what I mean here is this. You might be chasing someone down, or you want to get close enough to your opponent so you can ignite them. Let's use these two examples. Well, what most players will do is just right click on that target or press their ignite on them from far away, and that's it. So what happens as a result is their character just auto runs at that target in a straight line, and then they get hit by a skill shot or some form of CC and die. You look like a bot. So getting into the habit of right-clicking in between your auto attacks, your spells, and when you are chasing someone, gives you a bit of flexibility and mobility. You are harder to hit and you actually create more opportunities for yourself because you're moving around. You're not stuck in a straight line. Now this is so common even in elos a lot higher than bronze, so remember guys, straight lines are bad. Do not play like a bot and start clicking. Right, now this next tip, guys, is going to save your silver careers, because after coaching hundreds of students, I don't think I've ever seen anyone not have this problem, a lack of camera and map control. And you might be thinking, why is this important, Cheese? Well, think about it. Summoner's Rift is not just 3 lanes, is it? There are a couple of rivers, there are 2 sides to the jungle, or 4 quadrants if you like, there are 2 bases, a dragon and baron pit, so it's not like it's just you against your opposite number the whole time. So to be able to make optimal decisions on repeat, you have to take into account the multiple factors that influence a game, and guess what? Not all of these are in your lane. For example, if you're a top laner, and I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, you might see the enemy jungler more than you see your laner. Or if you're a support, to effectively roam around the map, you have to think about where the enemy jungler is, or if the enemy mid laner is missing. You can't just run off and think, oh, this seems like a good idea. Seems isn't good enough. You need to know it's a good idea. And the way you get to that point is by looking at the map to acquire all the information you can. Now I could say as well here, you should get used to using your F keys to look at your teammates, but the more prevalent issue in Silver particularly is not actually recentering your camera during fights. Like the number of games I've watched where the player's screen is on Howling Abyss while their champion is on Summoner's Rift is nuts, to be honest. So make sure, guys, you have a comfortable hotkey for that center camera on champion, and you can find this in your camera control settings in game. And when you're not on your screen or you're on the edge of it, give it a tap and bang, you're back in business. Right, now how many of you are gold? I reckon a lot of you are, and that's not the cheese being toxic, that's just the cheese being real, because most people who play League are in silver and gold. But yeah, if you are, this tip is going to 100% help you win more games. Now I don't know what it is, but gold players are infatuated with Dragon like CLG are with losses. And this love for the Drake, you end up putting way too much importance on it, and this isn't just junglers, this is everyone in a game. For instance, when the enemy team start doing the first dragon of the game and your team is outnumbered, you and your teammates will still run in there trying to save the game because you think it ends after 1 dragon. Let the cheese tell you something. It doesn't. Now, if you are a subscriber to this Red Hot channel, then you would have heard the cheese go on about this in other videos, but I really want to focus on the gold player's mindset after 20 minutes here. Now, why do you think I said after 20 minutes? Come on, don't be shy. That's right, because Baron spawns. Now, when I coach students, and again, it doesn't matter what role or champion they are playing, the purple worm is the least of their worries. And what I mean is this. Let's say your team kills the enemy jungler and the rest of the enemy team got chunked during that fight. If Dragon is up too, 99% of the time, that gold team will go to Dragon instead of Baron, which is just wrong. Baron always comes first, guys. If you have watched any pro games or high elo games, you would definitely have noticed how much emphasis the top level players place on Baron, because it is the game winner. Think of getting Dragon like a buzzer beater at the end of a quarter in basketball. And sorry if you guys don't follow it, but what I'm saying is, yeah, it's nice, but it's less impactful in the bigger picture. Then when we think of Baron, this is the game winner. So in your games, when the 20-minute mark comes around, you should first of all be playing near Baron, so you can take it if the enemy team is a bit discombobulated, and they will be, trust me. But you should also think about Baron. If you see the enemy jungler farming in the bot lane, Baron. If you kill the enemy jungler, Baron. If you're ahead and want to force a team fight, Baron. Otherwise, you just get Baron for free. I think I'm going to turn into Baron in a minute. Now, there are some variables you have to take into account which team is ahead. If you have a team comp that can actually do Baron quickly, so champions like Cassiopeia and Kai'Sa are some of the best, but a champion like Jhin is much slower. And then what's happening on the rest of the map? For example, if the enemy Tryndamere is slamming away at your Nexus, then you have no choice but to recall. But when all else is equal, guys, the purple worm is at the top of your priorities. You're going to capitalize on your opponent's mistakes that much more and win that much more as a result. Now, the cheese would also like to capitalize on your attention and kindly ask you to smash that like button like you're now going to do with that Baron. And yeah, the tip for Platinum Elo, here we go. Now, how many of you get concerned when your mid laner is first timing Yasuo? I mean, concerned is a bit of an understatement. You're probably going ape, you know what? And this is the mistake this Yasuo is making. Playing a champion he is unfamiliar with, sure, that's bad. But what's worse is playing Yasuo because that person thinks champion diversity is a good thing. It is good until the point where you're playing more than 3 or 4 champions in the last 10 or even 20 games. Like, you guys can tell me in the comments if you're guilty. How many of you have played a different champion in each of your last 10 games? You must repent your sins. Unless you're Faker or one of the elite players in the world who need to adapt to the ever-changing meta, then mixing up who you play on the reg is doing no good to anyone but the other team. Every champion in League, even if it's an easy-to-play champion like Ezreal, for example, the difference between an Ezreal master and a beginner, even intermediate Ezreal, is huge. There are so many intricacies with every single champion that it takes hundreds, sometimes thousands of games to fully understand and fully use a champion's kit. So if you have 10 games on Sivir, you've got 10 games on Ezreal, you've got 10 games on Caitlyn, 5 on Samira, 3 on Vayne, 1 on Misfortune, you better hope you're immortal, because 99% of players don't have time to perfect these champions, and in turn you're going to notice barely any improvement, if any for that matter. So from this point onwards, guys, you are swearing by Coach Cheese that you will pick no more than 3 champions to play in the nearest future, and all I want in return is for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit that bell so you don't miss any of our Turbo Smurf content. Right, let's continue with the Turbo Smurfing and talk about one of the biggest mistakes Diamond players make, and this applies to everyone. Whether I'm coaching a jungler, mid laner, top laner, this is often committed. So you guys may think the game starts when the minions bang heads around the 130 mark, but guess what? It starts in champ select. And what I'm getting at here, guys, is that the most important detail to think about in the first 10 minutes is how you should play your matchup. So if you don't have an adequate understanding of how a matchup should play out or what you should do in that particular matchup, you are starting that game in a hole, because preparation and anticipation, these are real. Like, why do you think pro teams have coaches and analysts? Preparation and anticipation. They can envision what's going to happen in a game based on the champion matchups, but this means nothing if the players themselves have no idea. So here's what the cheese suggests. Create a notepad file on your PC, or you can write it in a little book you've got if you're a boomer, and make a list of every possible matchup you might encounter on the Rift. I'm a boomer too, by the way. And this is also why playing only a few champions is more optimal for climbing. Otherwise, you would be making lists for days. And yeah, under each champion's name, you are going to write level 1, and you're then going to talk about how you should play that level. So what ability do you skill first? Where do you stand in the lane? What do you want to do the first wave? Do you push, match the push, let it push into you? How do you trade? When do you trade? All of these questions should be answered because it's going to help you picture that encounter. For example, if I say Zed versus Orianna, if you're Zed, you take Q first, and you play as safe as you can without taking a harass from Orianna's auto attacks. You can try to shuriken the Ori, but when this is on cooldown, you are running away immediately. In terms of the wave, you don't even touch it unless you are queuing to last hit. If you let Ori push into you, this is good. So that's an example template if you like. Then you do the same for level 2, because the dynamic of the lane has changed. For example, an Ahri is more than likely going to skill her charm at this point, and now you have to be careful, see? Then the same for level 3 and the same for level 6. Now what you're doing here, guys, is creating memory. So you know what muscle memory is, I'm sure. Like if I tell you to skill up your Q, you just instinctively press Control and Q, right? Because you've done it so many times. Well, by typing out your matchups and the most efficient way of playing that lane, you create memory memory. Think of a memory card the old PlayStations used to have. Well, this notepad is your memory card, and at the start of each game, you load up that data you have, so you are prepared and ready to anticipate anything your opponent might throw at you. And even diamonds who I've coached to the mid lane, for example, guys, they will be playing a ranged champion into a Yone, let's say level 1, and they're standing AFK as the first wave collides and don't auto attack him once for 3 levels. This is criminal. So create the database of information, add to it, edit it after your experiences, and you will improve that much as a player because you have a matrix and your opponent doesn't. You are the one. Take the red pill, bro. Now, something you guys also have to take is the GameLeap website pill. If you want more of the cheese, guys, and high elo courses, guides, videos, gameplay, our site has it all. So don't waste any time when this video ends and head on over there, links down below. All right, the final mistake, guys. Now, in Challenger, the biggest difference between this level of gameplay and gameplay from every other rank is something called tempo. And you may have heard this around the block, but the fact is 99% of players don't fully understand it and therefore never make use of it in their games. So tempo essentially refers to how well you use your time on the Rift. In other words, or in the words of the cheese, being as relevant as you can for as long as you can. Now, there is one dictator at play here, and that is your back timings. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the most amount of gold I've seen someone have without backing is 7,500. And this is a prime example of a bad back timing. This player had only 2 major items at this point as well, but was sitting on another 2, meaning that his time on the Rift for most of that journey to 7,500 gold was a complete waste. Think about this for me. When you get first blood and 400 gold within the first minute of that game, do you run off and stay on the map, or do you recall and invest that gold? Well, hopefully you recall and spend that gold because it gives you an advantage in that lane. You are stronger, you are more powerful at that point in the game than your opponent. So when you overstay, like Mr. 7,500 gold did, what do you do if someone on the enemy team starts fighting you? And let's say this player actually spent some of their 7,500 gold. You die, right? Or you lose that fight at least. And that's because you don't have tempo on the map. You are falling behind the game curve, if you will. As others spend gold and buy major items, you are falling behind because you're not doing the same. Let me give you one more example. Let's say you're playing Talon like our friend Ming Zhao. Your first back timer, and you can put this in your matchup notepad, is a serrated dirk, which is 750 gold when you start with a longsword. Now, what some players do when they hit that checkpoint is they go for a roam or they stay mid for a turret plate they cannot get, and this wastes time just because you are sitting on a major item. You can make that roam or get that plate after you get a dirk and get back on the map. And the worst mistake of all, I mean, it's not that bad, but it's the big difference between Challenger players and everyone else, is hitting level 6 without that back timer ticked. So for example, if a Talon hits level 6 with his starting longsword, who cares? But if he hits level 6 while being on the map with a serrated dirk, you better watch out. So you have to know your gold values, guys, and your key item spikes throughout a game. Otherwise, you are going to overstay and make rash decisions because you don't actually know what your gold represents. Now, this tempo dictator, the back timers, dictate how you manage minion waves, and this is the last thing the cheese wants to touch on. Now, who knows what a cheater recall is? Well, this became very popular last season because a famous pro player called Chovy did it all the time on Aurelia, and this is where you manage the minion waves in a way that allows you to back and buy and return to the map without losing anything, and that's the key. So when you want to make that purchase, guys, you can do one of 2 things. You can hard push and recall, or if the enemy laner also backs but they have TP, you recall as well. Now, hard pushing means you deny the enemy laner or laner's farm, and the next wave will bounce back to the middle of the lane, so by the time you return, you minimize your losses. And the reason you back when the enemy laner does with TP is because you don't want to be caught shoving a wave by a TP on one of those minions, because that champion that's TPing has spent more gold. They have more items and are therefore stronger. So matching their base is very important. Tempo is a very intricate detail in League guides, but it's actually quite simple in the cheese's opinion, and explaining this idea and teaching it to one of my students, well, they got to rank 1 EU West with it at the start of this season. But thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you can use some of this information applied in your games. Any comments or thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments. This has been Coach Cheese, and until tomorrow's video, peace.